welcome back to my weekly Game of Thrones review. This week we will be talking about the new episode, The Laws of Gods and Men. It was really fun to see Braavos in the opening sequence. I think this is the first time we've been to Braavos at all, I think, right? First time it was in the opening sequence, and I think it's the first time the opening sequence has really been different all season. And it's always fun to see, the different cities and castles and things pop up when the opening sequence is different. So I got a real kick out of that. And then the opening sequence of the show was really cool too. Like the first scene, you pan in, you're above the boat, and then you pan in and you see Stannis and Davos on the boat, and then you pan out and you see that they're sailing underneath the legs of the Titan of Braavos, and that was really, really cool. Stannis and Davos go to the bank, and then they're all like, well, your butt's not on the Iron Throne, so we don't really care. You don't have that many men, you can't feed them, we're not backing you. And Stannis gets all ticked off and starts to leave, because he's Stannis, he's a hothead. He's a Baratheon, obviously. But then Davos is like, okay, now wait here a minute. Who are you people backing now? And they're like, Tywin Lannister. And he's like, well, what happens when Tywin dies? Are you going to deal with Tommen? Are you going to deal with Cersei? She's crazy. Stannis is the only one who has a clue. Okay, so then Yara, Theon's sister, and I still feel weird calling her Yara because in the books her name is Asha, something like Asha. But they changed it on the show because it was too close to Asha the Wildling, who takes care of Rickon. But it's still a little weird, to see it written out so many times and for it to not be the same. It was the same with Talisa, because her name was Jane Westerling in the books. Just, it's weird. I get why they did it, but it's still kind of weird, But, she and her Ironborn men are going to rescue Theon, and they go to the Dreadfort, and Ramsay's having sex with that creepy girl who gets off on killing people. And, it gets a little rough, because he ends up, covered in scratches and bleeding, and, I guess it would be expected that Ramsay Bolton likes it rough. I guess technically he's still Ramsay Snow, but he definitely seems like someone who would like it rough. But they sneak in, and then Yara gets this guy to tell her where Theon is, and, he's in the kennel, but he thinks it's a trap. He starts freaking out, I don't want to go with you, what is happening? This is a trap, I'm going to get in trouble, blah, blah, blah. And Ramsay comes in with some men, and, they're like, and Yara kills a ton of them, but then, and her men, but then Ramsay looses the dogs on them, and they run back to the boats, and they're like, we're going, and they're like, what about your brother? And she's like, my brother's dead, because, she can tell that Theon is not Theon anymore. At least doesn't seem to be that way. And for his loyalty, he is rewarded with a bath. And honestly, because they had, him stripped down, and, Ramsay has this sadistic pleasure look thing on his face when Theon's pants are down, and he sees, his handiwork of having, chopped off his junk and stuff. But, when he was picking up the sponge to sponge Theon off, he squeezed some water in, I thought he was going to squeeze over his head, and then Theon was going to start remembering when he was baptized, by his Uncle Aaron, for the drowned god or whatever, but he wasn't, I was wrong on that. I kind of wish I hadn't been, but obviously it'd be difficult for him because he's still in a weird situation with Ramsay, who is now having him pretend to be Theon again in order to trick the Iron Men. So that'll be interesting to, see someone who thinks he's not that person pretending to be that person. I don't know. It's pretty meta. Drogon decides he wants baked goats for dinner, and he goes and sets a bunch of goats on fire, runs off with them. And then, the goat herd comes to Marine, and he's like, your dragon killed my goats, here's the bones. And she's like, oh, well, we'll pay you 3 times. Daenerys, obviously. Because she was sitting court. But then she finds out that, being queen is exhausting because she's still got, over 200 people waiting to see her. And that's after dealing with the goat guy and the son of a nobleman who she crucified, who is all ticked off and, warning her about, their customs and things like that, which is something, that they had been trying to convince her of on the way up there. You need to, if you're going to rule, you need to learn about the people. Like Dario Naharis is trying to, teach her about the flowers and stuff, and so she would get to know the places that she was going to rule, and it's obvious that she doesn't really know, her city at all. Okay, and then Oberyn joins the council. He was offered a seat by Tywin, and they discuss, Daenerys and the fact that she's got this large army now, and she's set up as Queen and Meereen, and her dragons are bigger, and the whole time, all I can think was, how do you solve a problem like Daenerys? Like, wouldn't it be funny if there was, like, a Game of Thrones musical? Just, like, using, like, songs from other musicals and changing them. Daenerys isn't that different from Maria von Trapp, right? Okay, well, maybe she is, but it's still funny. They talk about it, and then Oberyn continues to be awesome, and he's like, I just want to go and travel and see the world. I don't want to be stuck here, like in the same place I grew up my entire life. And I'm just thinking, preach. I unfortunately still live in Indiana, but I did get out of the town I grew up in, and I feel like I'm better for it. And, we'll be moving on to bigger and better things soon, so I totally get where Oberyn's coming from. Although, I'm not a prince, and as Varys pointed out, princes have that luxury a little bit more than other people do. But, Oberyn impressed Varys because he could tell, even though he had dropped his accent, that he was from Lys, and that he had dropped his accent, and I feel like Oberyn can hold his own with Varys, and I think Varys can see that and respects that. And then the episode ends with the trial of Tyrion Lannister for the death of Joffrey Baratheon. And, it's not going well. And Jaime can see this, and he sees that it's basically just a big joke. And so when they break, he goes in to talk to Tywin, and he's like, this is a farce. He flat out says that, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's what I've been thinking the entire time. This is a joke. But I don't think anybody ever really expected Tyrion's trial to go fairly. But Jaime's like, listen, I don't want him to die. And he finally says, if you spare his life, I will resign from the Kingsguard and go back to Casterly Rock. Which is what Tywin's been trying to get him to do since the beginning of the season anyway. And Tywin is immediately like, okay, deal. And then he says that, he'll arrange it so that Tyrion can go to the Night's Watch. And Jaime tells Tyrion this, and then Tyrion's like, Ned Stark got the same deal, and I don't think it ended up well for him. But Jaime's still like, it's gonna be alright, just keep your mouth shut, blah, blah, blah. And then they call their next witness, and it's Shae. If you'll remember, Tyrion had Shae sent away, for her protection a few episodes earlier. But, here she is lying, like, bold-faced lying, like, just saying, she knows that Sansa and Tyrion were behind it. She heard them plotting, that he had, like, stolen her, that, he was a terrible, terrible person who made her do terrible things. And, hearing her lying, about their relationship and everything they had, it just pushes him to the brink. And he's like, I should have just let Stannis kill all of you. And he's like, I'm going to confess. He's like, I'm going to confess that, I am not on trial for murder. I am on trial for being a dwarf. Starts like yelling at Tywin for, having always hated him his whole life, and yelling at Cersei, and yelling at Shae, and yelling at everyone. And it's just not a good thing at all. And then he's like, I want a trial by combat. And, he and Tywin just have, like, this staring contest for, like, ever. It's not actually forever, but it feels like a long time, when you're staring at someone. And that's where the episode ends. And is it just me, or does it feel like the episodes have been getting shorter the last few episodes? Like, I feel like normally they take up more of the hour, but I feel like they've been starting later and ending earlier. And it's kind of weird. But I'm looking forward to next week. Looks like, there's some more Tyrion stuff, more Arya stuff, more Lysa being crazy and trying to push Sansa out the moon door. I'm going to make a guess that at least one person is going to be dying in the next episode, if not 2 or 3 or more, because, this is Game of Thrones and nobody is safe. Except my beloved Arya, who is supposedly safe because George R.R. Martin's wife has threatened him if he kills her off. So that gives me hope, that Arya Stark will continue to live to see another day. But, if they follow the books, it seems like the next episode could be a bit of a game changer. Obviously I don't know for sure because they tend to stretch things out or squish it up, and so you don't know when things are going to happen. But so I'm excited for it. I can't wait to see what happens and see if I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'll look like an idiot, but that's okay. It's YouTube. I think half the people on YouTube probably look like idiots, so why not me, right? I'll see you next week. Bye.